But that's kind of,
Marilyn Fleming,
that's
sorry.
intuitively correct.
Hi everyone, help me in welcoming Marilyn Fleming today. She is a creative wonder. In fact, she has so much creativity that she really doesn't have a title. She's just a creator of many things, right? Of art and music and books, and she just has a creative soul. She's originally from Manhattan, but she was raised in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. And she's led a rich, full life, and guess when she met the man of her dreams? Just 2 years ago at 74 years old.
74, I always prayed, please God, 74, let me score. And here I am.
That gives me hope, I can
Yes.
tell you, because I've not yet met the man of my dreams, so that gives me hope a lot. Well, we're here to talk to you a little bit today. We just want to hear a little bit about your story, okay?
Okay.
So tell us about what was your childhood like? Tell us some good stuff.
Well, I had an Irish Catholic father, and I had a Baptist mother, and I was the oldest of 3 girls, but before they had me, they were married in Washington, D.C. My dad was Special Administrator to J. Edgar Hoover in the FBI, and my mother had her master's degree in sociology from Duke University, and she was Baptist and he was Catholic. But before they decided to have me as their first child, they had a little puppy dog named Ruffles that they practiced parenting skills on before they had me, and then my mother took some course in Manhattan about how to raise a society proper lady. In fact, all of my potty training, I'm not, I'm sitting on a wingback chair, my mother is, with me, with a little tiny pot underneath there, where she taught me proper potty
No
training.
way.
Yes.
So you had to sit, stay, and potty right there.
Exactly, but in comfortable surroundings, not on a cold anything. I mean, feeling, touch. I was a very sensitive little child, and let's see. And I was the oldest of 3 girls, because then 20 months later, my second sister Barbara was born, and 20 months later after that, my third sister Jean was born. And the reason I feel that I had such a happy childhood is because on my mother's side, she was a country doctor's daughter, but their first child that they had was stillborn. Mm-hmm. The next child they had was my mother, and then the final child that they had, my mother was born in 1917. The final child they had was born in 1918, and 3 months later died of the Spanish flu. Mm-hmm. So all this stuff that's happening now goes back genetically in my memories as I'm even speaking of bringing back all that. But the good part was that my mother was so loved by her mother and father that I, as the first child, and after, the puppy dog training, I got the best love ever from both. And my dad was from a family of 7, and his father was an Irish railroad conductor. Mm. And my father was the only one to get a law degree, and be a Phi Beta Kappa, and an attorney in 3 states, West Virginia, where he grew up, Michigan, and then Texas. And I had a happy childhood, but I felt like I was born like I'm an old soul, because I took care of my mother and my father, because I always felt energies, and I always felt there just wasn't something that was clicking correctly. I loved having my sister, all my pictures of me as a little girl, or I have my arm around my sister, and then my other sister, I always tried to stretch it over, because I had a team. I was with them.
You were the head of the team?
I didn't know that I was the head of the team. I didn't know the feeling of how mature I was at an early age, I think from a soul perspective, until I went away to Stevens College, and all of a sudden, all the things that automatically had happened through my whole childhood weren't happening anymore. Mm. It took longer for things to get to me. They were arguing at home. They really missed me, all that kind of stuff. So this is just my self-concept of how I felt my life was as a child. I felt a very happy childhood.
And you sound like you're very proud of your family.
But they were the feelings that they were very different. Like my dad would look to see if our nails grew every night. Well, your nails don't grow that fast. And if they didn't, we'd go, well, work on that, don't bite your nails. And he had very unusual kinds of ways of discipline compared to my mother, which was all pure love and happiness, and it'll be okay, don't worry, comforting, wonderful. And I don't know, what other kind of things.
That leads me to an interesting question. So you stated that your dad was Catholic? Your mom was Baptist? Okay, so tell us a little bit more about what that meant spiritually, other than your mom being pure love. What did that mean? What was the spiritual environment like in church and stuff like that?
We went to church. We went to the Catholic church. You had to sign the paper to go to Catholic church.
Oh, that's
And we
right.
went to, and then unbeknownst until we were relocated from Grosse Pointe, Michigan to Dallas, Texas when I was in 8th grade. Before I got an award from the kindergarten to the 8th grade, I had attended every Saturday catechism class for 7 years.
Oh.
Perfect attendance. They'd never had a child that had done that before.
Wow.
And my dad was in the background. My Shiro, that's my dog. That's Marilyn. And my mother went along with that also. And we went to the church too. And I didn't know the difference between Catholic and Baptist at that time. We were Catholic and we went there on that time. And
you went on Saturdays. Did you go to church on Sundays too?
We went catechism on Saturday, and rain or shine, and northern weather, snowstorms, anything.
This is why I don't live there.
Yes. Yeah.
So tell me something. You very proud of the fact, and your father's very proud of the fact, and so was your mom, supportive that you went to every catechism class.
Yeah.
Tell me what your perception was about doing works, and you may not have had a perception then, but now that you look back, founded in going all the time and being a perfect student, how did that impact your relationship or your spiritual journey?
Relative to grades in school, I was an A student and I was an athlete. Because I just loved to express myself, mostly because the energy in my home that I felt just didn't. It always seemed a little bit off. And so that my way of getting away from that, in fact, we had a lovely maid, and to do that I would spend my time mostly in the attic alone, where we had 4 antique poster beds, and I'd create environments and have the maid bring me lunch up there, and me and my dog would just have wonderful times because my sisters, they were doing different things, and I was just always there but separated out, and I loved our home there. Because we had a sandbox, we had a garden, we had the water, I had friends next door, across the street. I was just a really happy camper.
It sounds
I really
lovely.
enjoyed it. And
you had all those creative expression places. That's where you found your creation.
But I got to be in the attic where I was with the birds and the bees and saw the trees and the aromas and all the things that turned me on.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I can see you there. I can actually see a little movie about you or a play.
And that's what I do. I create little vignettes.
Oh, cool. Well, then how convenient is that? Okay, good.
That was my kind of normal.
So you had this, semi-idyllic life as a young girl and a young woman. What are the most difficult life issues you've had to deal with?
Well, and in the 8th grade, all of a sudden, my dad came home and announced to us that we are moving to Dallas, Texas. And I lost all my friends. I had to start all over again completely. And when I came to Dallas, Texas, they walked slower, they talked slower. World history became the Alamo. And they had an inch of snow and school was out. And my dog, Ruffles, just didn't understand either. And she walked away and lost. We moved on Lenox Lane and Royal. And it was all, we had 3 1/4 acres, and it was all sprawled and spread out and big Texas kind of stuff. And my dog
Ruffles got lost?
Ruffles, we couldn't find her. She just got lost.
Oh,
and I was one with Ruffles. I was lost too. So I was in 8th grade, and I said, what do y'all do here as women? And my dad put me in a Catholic school for the 8th grade. I'd never been in a Catholic school. And had to wear a uniform. And I was skinny and athletic, and Texas girls were totally different. They were, curvy, and they thought cheerleading was like the biggest, most incredible kind of athletic activity that you could achieve. So I was a cheerleader in the 8th grade. Then my dad put me to Ursuline Academy for 2 years, where all women, and I was really searching for friends. So I wrote on the entrance exam, I intentionally wrote wrong answers, so that I wouldn't be with the smart people. I wanted to be with the fun people, because I really was missing
That's fun.
having friendships.
You wanted to
I
belong.
wanted to connect. I wanted to have, I had childhood, wonderful friends, and I never got to see them again. And I was starting over. And then starting over with all women, I wasn't used to that either, because I went home to all women
Wow.
and went to school with all women.
So kind of early on, your idyllic life in Grosse Pointe, that beautiful picture you painted was disrupted.
Very disruptive, yes.
And that was impactful on you.
Yes.
And how about since then? Have there, there's been a few years since the 8th grade. What other things might be some defining moments or forks in the road or turning points that have impacted you in your life? What have you had to overcome?
Okay, one thing I remember right before when we were moving, there was a movie that came out in 1956 called Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
I remember that.
It scared me to death, but then gifted me in a way, because at the end they say, but it's going to be okay. We're going to call the FBI. The FBI's on their way. So that was protected me, because my dad was in the FBI.
Ah.
Then we moved to Dallas, Texas, and then my dad is the 1959, and my dad is the chairman of the Society of Ex-FBI Agents, and they have a national convention here in Dallas with Neiman Marcus and the fashion show and all this kind of stuff. So that did help me get a little bit more stability, because we had a Lincoln Continental, and my dad was doing this big thing, so that gave me more. I felt my world hadn't been so pulled out. But of course, at the time, I didn't know what all that meant. Because my mother was very wealthy, a doctor's daughter, only child, and she never said anything about rich or poor. She always said, we're comfortable.
Yeah.
And so that was how I always believed everything was. But back to your question, because I felt like I went a little bit off on that. What was the question again?
What else have you had to deal with or overcome?
Well, then at that particular time I moved to Dallas, I found out my father was going out on my mother.
Ew.
And at age 14, I had my boyfriend who had a car and was older than me. I found out where she lived, and I went up to the door and I knocked on the door and I said, my name is Marilyn, and you are disrupting my father and my family life. Will you please leave my daddy alone?
Wow. How old were you?
14.
Wow.
I couldn't, it wasn't right.
It still touches you right now. I can see it in your eyes.
It does, because my father would sing in the choir on Sunday, then he'd go to confession on Friday, and go to church. So it was all right. And then when I went to Stevens College, he wrote me and he said, if you'll let me know that you've gone to church on Sunday, I will send you your allowance.
Wow.
And I said, but Dad, aren't you paying me to go to church? That doesn't seem cricket. That doesn't seem honorable.
Seems like a real distortion.
Well, it was. The Catholic part that he was telling me about was not cricket in my mind. It was not kosher. It was not proper. And so my mother ended up sending me my allowance, and he never sent me anything from 18 on, because I wouldn't go to church and be paid to go to church.
Wow, but gosh, there's so many layers there. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that, but there's so many layers there.
Well, I have another one on my mother's side, because when I went to Ursuline Academy, we went to a retreat. And so we thought, well, I'm all girls in this retreat. And so the priest says, what is it when part of a man's body enters part of a woman's body? So we're all writing down our answers. We're going like, maybe this won't be, we'll learn something at this retreat. And at the end, he keeps on opening up, and he doesn't come up with anything. And the answer is, for what is when part of a man's body enters part of a woman, French kissing. And I went, oh my God, my boyfriend, my tip of my tongue. So I went to confession immediately to say, and then the priest said, well, that's not a moral sin, it's a venial sin. So I went home and talked to my mother, and my mother said, that's the one thing I don't understand about the Catholic Church. Why do you have to go through another person to get to God? And I said, thank you, Mother. And that helped me untangle these things that were so improperly schooled to me.
Wow. So there's such rich layers there of how many offshoots that can impact your life, right?
Yes, yes.
So given that, and you almost started to go there, so I'm gonna dig in a little deeper. When did you really know, how did you come to know Jesus as your personal savior versus the priest and the misinformation you'd received?
Well, and then when I got married, I ended up, after I graduated from the University of Alabama, I went to work, my mother said, my dad got remarried on my graduation, on my college graduation. He remarried that weekend instead of coming to my graduation. So to make up for it, his wife, who had an employment agency, she was going to see if she could find me a job. So I gave my interior design boards to there. My mother calls me 2 weeks later, and tells me 2 weeks later, because I lived at home. She said, your dad has a job interview for you. I said, okay, Mom, I will go just to satisfy Dad. He wants to make up for not being there for your graduation. I will go. So 4 hours later, after the interview, I come out. It was phenomenal. I got the job. The gentleman was 12 years older than me. He had 3 kids by our marriage. And 6 months later, he asked me to marry him. And I was so happy being able to do interior design and expressing myself. My first project was a hotel out of Portland, Oregon. I worked with architects, engineers. I was the only female in a field of executive. I was executive because the interior designer I was working for, she quit. And so I was immediately head interior designer. So that was my normal, because I was taught your word is your bond. And I've been doing it since I was in the attic, creating environments and doing all that kind
Who
of stuff.
taught you your word was your bond?
My father.
Ah.
Yes, my hypocritical father.
So let me just, I wanna.
But anyway, he refused to come to my marriage. He refused to walk me down the aisle because I was marrying not in the Catholic Church and a divorced man.
So here's what I want to kind of pull together for all of us out there, because your story's so compelling.
I always felt God directed me on correct information my whole life.
But he kind of did, but tell me how he corrected you, but you believed and worked under the system of, I want to recap a little bit. Your dad, you caught him at 14 cheating on your mom. Yet at the same time, super proud of you that you're doing the works by going to catechism class and making straight A's, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're an achiever, right?
Oh,
you're being rewarded for that.
He would put my books in the car and he'd follow me as I walked to school, because that's what he had to do.
Princess. Okay, that's good. Princess is good.
No, but it's physical. I was a physical person, so I didn't mind that.
Right, and then after he's cheating on your mom, and then he's gonna pay you to continue to go to church, and then later he abandons or betrays you by not showing up at your marriage, and choosing another woman. He's chosen other women a couple of times over you as his daughter. Tell me how that relates to how you see Christ now. How has that changed? How has it impacted your perception of being a Christian, your actions, your motives, your heart, the Father? How has that changed you and your perception once Christ came into the picture at an older age?
Well, I believe that Christ was always in my picture. In other words,
it
was the words that I was just, every word that I thought meant something. When I found that it was the wrong meaning, I just discarded it.
Tossed it out.
Talked it out. It was like my mother with her master's degree in sociology. She told me how life was going to be, but I had to do the lab. I mean, it was all the lecture series. That's what you got the degree in. But I had to do the lab. And at every point in my life that I've discovered the correct information, that's always been God right there to me. So when we're supposed to review and find what it is, the 3 things, there have been 30,000 things along the way. And each time I feel I've been gifted. And then I was sharing the fact that with the Catholic and the Baptist, and then the great-grandfather that started the First Baptist Church west of the Mississippi and was the editor of the Baptist Gazette, if I've got all those genetic memories and qualities in my background from the people that made me, it's just a natural thing. It's like a silver thread.
It is a silver thread.
It is a silver thread, and so that's why I don't have, he's always been there, I've just never, because the titles of being Catholic or doing this and doing that, the way that it was written, I just don't, those words aren't as important as the feelings and the aha moments for an Oprah quote.
Right.
It's just how I am, who I am. It's a soul thing. I found something that said, oh, I know what it was. Maybe this will answer that question. My sister got pregnant accidentally. She got raped and she got pregnant. My other sister, around the same time, she and her boyfriend loved each other so much that after she went away to college for 1 year, they got together in my bedroom and she got pregnant. So she was pregnant. And my father had divorced my mother, and we were waiting on things to happen. And the psychiatrist fell in love with my mother because my mother went to a psychiatrist to help through things. And he had met both my sisters, and the only person he hadn't met was me through them. And when he met me, after he talked to me, he said, Marilyn, there's one thing I'd like you to do. And I said, okay, what is that? And he said, I want you to think about number one. And I said, who's that? And I was serious as lightning in that question. I mean, I had never found my own identity or separated myself out from that. You know, my puppy dog and my family and my mom and dad. I had never separated myself out until number one. Even when my mother died in 1999, I had to go to a past life reading, subliminal, because when your mother died, you went with her.
Huh.
I mean, it was like a soul thing. I was still connected to her and not connected to me. And it wasn't until 74 when I prayed every single birthday picture, it's me praying, please God, send me my soul, send me someone that I'm supposed to be with. Until 74 when I met this gentleman that was incredible, and God answered every single prayer right there, that I just was super happy than I've ever been my whole life.
That you ever had your whole life?
That
all your prayers were rolled up and answered into that.
Into someone I could share my life with.
Wow.
Someone that connected to my heart and all my other precious public.
Wow. That is really beautiful, especially at, what do we say, this late stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
To find that there's still real joy and depth and love. But here's the question I have for you, okay? Because I'm going to get a little deep. I'm going to get a little Oprah on you, okay?
Go for it.
By the way you answered some of the questions, I can see for much of your life, maybe even with this amazing man, that your identity has been wrapped up in those people. Whether you say genetically, you're saying it. You're saying generationally, genetically, past life stuff, generationally, your identity, how would you describe your identity today?
My identity today is exquisite. I love every single moment when I say I'm living in the now. That's also a national organization for women, to me, because I worked on the International Peace Conference that we had here in Dallas in 2007, and I was on the steering committee with Vivian Castleberry, and there were women from 53 countries, and I have never felt so connected in my entire life, because women, our voice has not been heard yet. And I feel like I want to be on a loudspeaker.
You want to be one of those.
I want to be, because that was my book I was writing, or that I wanted to write. I called it Womanality, ... Beyond Mentality, ... For Humanity. Only because when we are conceived, we are all females at birth. It's been documented, and the lady's name is Davis, and that's a family name of mine. We either remain female or we become male.
Yeah.
And I just feel that my time is now. In fact, if I would not have met that lady right there, Donna, at the Fellowship of Professional Women luncheon, 4 weeks ago.
Yes.
You went to the one I met. I did a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I went there because they had the guy American Sniper, his widow.
Oh, I missed that.
And I went there only because with what's going on politically here, I wanted to hear how a woman handled war, because that's supposedly what could happen in our world. I mean, what's
Dude,
going
it's happening
on
now.
from a mental, psychological, every kind of way. And instead, I just, again, found the power of woman and the power of our brilliance.
Yeah.
And when I worked on the International Peace Conference in 2007, we had all of the female Nobel Peace laureates there. And the lady from Ireland always talked about how the women behind the scene in the sanctuary of their bedroom found out what their husband's problems were, and the women would, like we always do behind the scenes, cure everything and make everything better. So that's what I feel my purpose is, and that's just God speaking. That's the goddess speaking. I don't know how to quote all the Bible things, yet I found everything that I'm picking up lately, wherever I go, has some religious significance to it. But it's religious to my heart, things that I understand.
So you sound like you're in a beautiful place and time of your life, and
Yes.
good for you. I love that. And I my favorite scripture is the latter days of this house are greater than the former, which means every day is better than before.
Oh, yeah.
That's my favorite.
But that's a childhood one. Every day and every way I'm getting better and better.
Oh, is it? I don't. Yeah, okay, maybe it is. All right.
That's a good one.
So and it sounds like you're in that place too. Now, your identity. Tell me how your identity in this amazing place that you feel, describe to me what your identity in Christ is. Have you heard that term?
I don't separate me in Christ.
Good. Okay. Because if you're abiding with God and
Yeah.
He's abiding in you, the Holy Spirit is your spirit. You're
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And you felt that way all along.
Through everything.
And since you were a tiny girl,
Yeah.
You've never had a moment where it was like, wow, God pulled me out of this depth, or out of that horrible thing, or out of that.
Out of each horrible thing that I've been through. In fact, I was out about a year ago, and someone came up to me, Marilyn, you're still alive. Oh my God! If I'd been
That's a
through what
greeting.
you went through, I would have killed myself.
That's a nice greeting.
And it's just, life is a gift. Every moment is incredible. And I'm gifted. I'm the only one in my family that's alive and living to tell my story. And my younger sister, sadly, she went to the dentist to get a root canal, and they didn't realize she was having a stroke. They thought it was just the medicine was wearing off. And she later on got pneumonia and died, and I was a caregiver, and I'd never been sick in my entire life, and at the age of 68, I caught her pneumonia and had to go to the hospital. And she died while I was in the hospital.
Wow.
But that thing I said about not knowing who number one, that's when God gave me the gift that there's no way I could help her. I couldn't get out of the hospital, and I had to recognize that I was separate from all that, and I was alive, and it was my gift and responsibility to take care of myself.
Yeah.
I was at age 68.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I just think life is absolutely wonderful no matter what you go through, and you just have to look at it in a way that is breathable.
Yeah.
And receivable.
Yeah. So how, as we wrap up, what would you encourage the ladies who are listening? How would you encourage them about their faith walk and their relationship with God as it compares to, legalisms?
Respect your genetic elegance.
Wow.
Because we are all sacred beings. We're all trying to remember our sacred selves. And my one other sister that's left, she was, when she was in the military, she had her second child in Taipei, Taiwan. And then she had a nervous breakdown. She married a Catholic man from a family of 8 boys. And when he asked the military, how do I get my wife back? They said, well, we can do shock treatments. So they came back to the States, and my sister was given shock treatments, and 2 weeks later, they outlawed them in the military. But my sister was one of those that got that. Fast forward to her life, she became a hypochondriac, and she became all kinds of things. And then 5 years ago, she was visiting her son. in Kansas, and she had a massive brain seizure.
Wow.
They immediately had to put her in the nursing home, where she's been ever since. And she doesn't remember anything, and she's been for however many, this year, she's been in a nursing home where her husband can see her on the front floor, but he can't,
Oh.
they can talk through the window. But regardless of that, she had COVID, and she got through COVID. So I'm talking about, I must come from unbelievable genetic, powerful, strengthening things for that to be even just happening to my sister.
Yeah.
She was here in Dallas when the Kennedy
For that to-
assassination happened.
Oh, for that to
And
be
my
your
dad was
good
there.
fate.
Yeah,
Okay,
so I'm just
last,
saying, so my philosophy is just look at your life in a way that, look for the good in everything that happened. Look for what you learned from it. Look for what you.
and how would you relate respect your genetic elegance? I like that term. Sounds lofty and good. I like the term.
Mhm.
How would you relate, do you relate your genetic elegance to being Christ's kin?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's who we are, how we are. That's how we're made. That's it. I mean, it's only,
Yeah.
I don't know how to,
So do you have anything else to tell the ladies before we tune out here?
thank you
That was
for
good.
being so patient to listen to all of my,
And thank you for interviewing her, Linda.
my genetic elegance.
I like that term.
My
genetic
womanality.
elegance. Womanality. You better coin that.
31 minutes.
Was it